Hi, today I'm going to show you a simple method to enlarge an image for a drawing on a larger format. This can also be used for enlarging drawings for paintings and any kind of imagery. So here I have a printout of some foliage that I'm going to draw using a gridding method. There are a lot of apps out there that can show you how to grid and actually do it for you in your photography, but I want to show you the hands-on method without an app so that you know how to do it for pretty much anything to enlarge any image up to a larger scale. This can also be used for murals, lots of things. So what you're going to need is your image. So I just printed this out. Doesn't matter what size it is and how, it doesn't have to be scaled because I'm going to show you how to keep it proportionate to this. You're going to need some pencils. I'm going to be working with a 4B graphite because I want you to be able to see the lines, but I wouldn't use this to do my lines because it's kind of a dark pencil. So I would suggest using a 2B or an HB or even a mechanical pencil, which I would prefer because then you have lighter line and it's easier to erase those grid lines once your overall drawing is finished. But for this, I'm going to use the 4B, and you'll also want to have some erasers of a Created Color monolith. I like this one because it's flexible, it's comfortable in my hand. There's plastic erasers, there's all kinds. This gets up the drawing really nice. But the one thing it will do is leave a lot of crumbs, but it's great for the darker marks. A kneaded eraser is the kind that when you stretch it, it renews itself. So when you're drawing and you want to just get rid of light lines, it's a really good tool to have. So to get started, I want to make sure that my enlarged piece, I have a 14 by 17 inch piece of paper, and it's approximately 8 inches by 10 and a half. So to enlarge this to this and keep it proportionate, there's one really simple method. And all it is I have gone in and created a border on two sides. And in order to do that, I need a ruler. And I'm measuring in from the edge of my paper. For here, I just did a 1/2 inch border. You can obviously go in a little bit further depending on what you want your finished piece to be, what size do you want it to be. But you want to center it on your new piece of paper. So what I did is on your ruler, you'll notice the marks, and all rulers are different, but this one has the 1 inch mark starting, so like the 0 line, starting a little bit in from the edge of the ruler. So you're not going to use the edge. You're going to go in and you're going to find that first mark, and you're going to line that up to the edge of your paper really carefully. Make sure it's right on there. And then I just went in 1/2 inch, and I did that in 2 places. If you can't see it, if you're looking at it from an angle, you want to make sure you get kind of on top of it to make sure your measurement is as accurate as possible. You can see my mark here that I did. So you're going to do it twice and then just line up through those marks. Go on the side so you can see. So I would just line up really carefully, draw my line through. For this border, I went in 1 inch and 1 inch, and I did the same thing. I don't know if you can see it, but I made a mark here and a mark here, measuring in from the edge, and drew a line through. So I have this to start me out. I don't want to finish it because I don't know what size I'm going to end up with yet. Exactly. A way to do that, so this is going to be my composition, but for viewing purposes, I'm going to start it like this. And I drew in, because it's all white, I drew in my border based on the edge of my foliage. And just drew that in, just connecting the same way you do connecting dots here, connecting the edge of something and the edge, because when you do a printout, it's going to be cropped. Same thing here, find some edges, line your ruler up and draw it all the way through, like I did. Now I'm going to take this corner, I'm going to bring it down to this corner that I have. And the way I'm going to line that up is I'm going to look up here and line it up, the edge, with that line. And then the same thing down here, line up your lines, double check it, always double check when you're measuring anything or you're going to make some marks. There's an old carpenter's rule, measure twice, cut once. So once you have this down, you can tape it down with a couple pieces of tape to keep it stable. I'm not going to do that. But what I'm going to do is I'm going to start at this corner and I'm going to use my ruler. I have a long 18-inch ruler, so that's pretty helpful. And the reason I needed to get this border all the way around is I need to see these corners because I'm going to draw a diagonal, making sure I don't shift my paper. That's why you might want to tape it down really light. I'm going to line it up to this corner and let it go through this corner. This is how you get your proportions right when you enlarge. I'm going to draw a diagonal going all the way through, just super light, and I'm going to extend it out. And then just continue it. So I have this line here. And I'm going to bring it all the way out. So now I have this. I have a 1/2-inch border here and a 1-inch border here. If I want to keep this proportionate, but I want to keep my borders kind of like this, all I have to do is choose one side. I'm going to choose my 1-inch down here, and I'm going to go up here. I'm going to turn this around, actually. I'm going to go up from here, get to my 1-inch mark, and wherever that mark that starts that 1-inch, and so you have your 1-inch here, and where this intersects this line, that's where your corner, your new corner might be. At least it'll be the end of this. So if I'm going in 1 inch, I'm going to make a mark over here. I'm going to draw through. If I choose one side, I can obviously just do this third line without even lining it up, but still, wherever it intersects, that's where your corner is going to be. And so you're going to have to maybe measure from the end. Let's see what I got. I got about 1/2 inch, just a touch more. And what I tend to do, my edge is not very clean on this paper, but you can use a triangle that has a corner and you can line up one edge here and then you get your other edge, or you can measure from the end. And I'm just over the 1/2 inch mark. I'm going to go kind of up here. So I have this mark and that, and I'm going to draw my border. So this is going to keep you proportionate to your printout, your smaller image. And as I hold my ruler, notice I'm holding it in the middle before I draw my line. It keeps it steady instead of sliding all over the place. And you have your new border. And if it's open-ended in one area, just bring it over with your ruler, keep that nice and clean. And I'm going to erase my diagonal. Okay, the next step that I'm going to do is create a grid on my image, and I'm going to choose squares. They're the easiest thing to use for transferring imagery like this. So I'm going to break this out, measure it out. It's 8 inches this way. The easiest thing for me to do is do 4 rows. So I would do 2 inches, 2 inches, 2 inches. And then I would do 2 inches. So I would have 2-inch squares going all the way through here. So I'm going to do that right now. Okay, so now I have my squares drawn in here, and I just did 2-inch squares. So I marked going along each edge using my ruler 2-inch marks going all the way around, starting from one side. And there's a little bit left over down here. So I'm going to start drawing up here. Doesn't really matter in the end. I'll discuss that in a minute. And then same thing, because I have marks on either side, I just drew right through them to create my grid. The next thing I need to do is I need to create the same proportionate grid onto here. So what that means is I need to have the exact same amount of squares, including this little bit down here, on here. So if I'm starting it, the easiest way to do it is I have 4 here. Split it down the middle, you get 4 equal sections. So I would have to measure, if I have, working with 12 by somewhere like 16, I think. I have 12 inches, so I just need to divide it by 4, and that's my measurement. So they're going to be 3-inch squares on here instead of 2, because that's proportionately, that's how it's going to go up. So along one side, I'm just marking 3, 6, and 9 on both sides. And just do it right along your edge. And when you draw, just do it lightly. You don't need to do it super dark. And then draw your lines through. Just be really careful when you line them up. If they're not absolutely perfect, you know, try to get as close as you can. It's not going to really change things too much, but if you have a lot of detail and you need to get things drawn just right, you definitely want to be really careful. So now I have these rows. Now to go the other way, I have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and like a third. So I'm going to start from one side. I know they have to be 3 inches, and I'm just going to do the exact same thing and then draw my lines through them. So I'm going to do that now. All right, so I have this grid drawn in, and it's proportionate to this drawing. So the next step is transferring the drawing. And when you have a lot of detail, or not so much detail, it doesn't really matter. I am looking for the big shapes first. I'm not worrying about, you know, a lot of the detail. In this particular project, we're going to be inking in negative shape, and the focus is on negative shape. So all we're going to be doing is drawing outlines of that negative shape. But how do you do that to make sure you get this image on here? The easiest thing to do is you have a square and you have a square. So you just start in one area and work your way across and down. So starting here, I'm looking at this edge, right? And I know from top to bottom, it has foliage. So from here to here. Then I know coming out from this corner, there's this long length that's going to cut across into here. So when I cross this border, where along this edge does this cross over? About how thick is it? Things like that. So that's what you're looking for. I'm using this as a guideline. So I'm going to start at the top, and I'm going to go over, and I can maybe eyeball my midpoint, and I look at this, and that's about halfway. So if I go up here, and I kind of mark a midpoint, and I think that's about halfway to the midpoint, it's right in there. And then I come down, I know it has a nice natural curve, and where along here does this kind of come out? Somewhere in, right in here. And remember, art is relative. So this is just a guide to help you. In the end, you may not look exactly like this. It may not measure exactly like it, but if you get it super close, you're doing great. So we really need to focus on these negative shapes. I'm not worrying about overlap marks because that's not going to be given any attention for this particular project. But if you are, you would still need a grid and you would draw it the same way. But for this project, which is a positive negative shape project where the inking will happen in the negative shapes, I need to make sure that these negative shapes on here represent this. So that's what I'm doing. And I'm going for the more simple things like this shape and then maybe bringing this up. And I know that this kind of connects. So this would go here and maybe here. And then again, looking around here, if I have a mark in the middle, scooch over to the right a little bit, and that's where that will come up. And I look at that negative shape, and I look at this negative shape. And now I'm moving further along from this corner. How far in does that come? Maybe somewhere in there. And then it's going in the same direction as this. So I'm going to lightly draw. Don't go really hard. If you want to use something like this as a guidepost and just draw that first all the way through, seeing where it goes up into this next box, that might be helpful. I would say it's somewhere in here. So you could actually connect. It's kind of like connect the dots. So if you can find where it goes through this one, kind of in the middle, and get a tiny bit down. And then just, let me go down further, connect them, and get close. It's not necessarily going to be exact. We're not tracing this. We're trying to draw it freehand and just get it to feel as close to this as possible. But if you use these outer edges as guides to where things meet up there, it'll be helpful. When you draw, try and draw from your whole arm, not just like this. So if you hold your pencil back a little bit further, you can get these nice long arches. And just maybe do it really light and sketchy, like a gesture drawing, to find the drawing. I have this here and this here, and I have this coming up, and I know it rounds and then turns back. So I'm just gonna do something like that. And then I have this shape here, which goes past my halfway mark. So it's there, and again, looking at the negative shape, and it's narrow. And it has these really cool little details. Definitely capture that, because when this is inked, those little details really show up. But those are added on maybe after you've drawn the major part of the branch. Something like that. So I'm going to do a couple squares just to see. This comes right out at the middle. And I'm looking at this negative shape. So I'm just going to bring this down like that. And then this, same thing, bringing it down to about where I see it in this area. And if it feels too fat, look at your photo reference and ask yourself questions like, well, how does it feel as you're drawing it? If it feels like it's too wide, you might want to come back to it after you've drawn the rest and again address the negative shape. Does it feel like what you see? Does it look like what you see when you're drawing? Again, find a negative, or not a negative, a midpoint along from here to here in this square. And this goes right above it. So if I go from here to here, side to side, find a midpoint, I know that leaf is hovering above it and it's going straight out. And then the tip of it is going on to the other side a little bit, just a tiny bit. And then I look at I'm just looking at it. How wide does this feel compared to this negative space? And how wide is it compared to this? They're very close. So just get that in there. And then I'm going to go for the next one that feels natural because I've already got a line in here. And I might want to draw all the way through, so I'm looking at, you can't see it on here, but I have a line here, and then I see where it is here. Okay, sorry about that, I had a visitor. All right, where were we? So basically, you're just using these edges to see where things start and come across by using that measurement. So I'm seeing where this, along this line, crosses. I'm gauging the width of it. You can compare it to the width of your square. You can compare it to other leaves, things like that. This takes time. It's not going to be super fast. But if you really look at your negative shapes, it will definitely help you. Like I'm looking at this little corner, and I should have that kind of thing going on there. And then I look at that negative shape, and I look at this negative shape. And it should feel pretty much the same, if not close. This I could carry down to, I don't know yet, down here, so I would have to come over here. And where does it go? It's about a third of the way across. So maybe in here. Somewhere in there. And then it crosses, and it has that really nice little stem that comes, oops, it actually goes straight down. And then I look again at this shape, and I want to draw that first. Any information that's behind it, I'm going to go back to that because there's some negative shape in there that I might want to really capture. Sometimes if things are clustered, you might want to get rid of a leaf. That's where you can edit things out to open up negative space. But those are the smallest shapes, and I will come back to that later. Right now I'm working on the biggest shapes that I have to really block this thing out. One other thing that you can do, if you're brave enough, is if I see a point, and I have a relationship to this edge of this square, and down here, I can make a point about where I see it, and I can do the same thing with this one here, and I can use that. I have negative space here, and I can just start drawing. If you're new to this or you're new to drawing, I suggest you just go square to square, connect those, and then gradually move on, working on the biggest shapes. And then when you've got the bigger shapes done, you go in and you do your smaller ones, and you edit, maybe add stuff, subtract things, things like that. Where am I? So going over here, I have a midpoint. This is coming right at the midpoint on this one. So I'm definitely going to connect that. And then here, midpoint to the corner. It's not quite halfway, it's just shy. So here would be halfway from here to here, it's just shy. I bring it there, and then I'm just gonna try and use my whole wrist to get a nice curve. And if I want to carry it down, is there a space here that I've already drawn? Look at that negative space. And then it cuts into this leaf. Coming back up to here, dropping this down a little bit, and then look at the negative shape. I'm not worried about overlapping. I am drawing negative shapes more than anything. And then this midpoint to the side, it's just over the midpoint from here to here, so maybe right in there feels about right. I'm not worried. There's like a weird little thing coming up. I'm not gonna even draw that because it kind of cuts my leaf a little strange. And again, drawing my eye down. Where does it come here? Along this edge. On this edge. My midpoint is here. Oh shoot, that was, yeah, that's what that is right there. That's the midpoint. So yeah, it needs to come down there. That's a long one. So just do short strokes. You don't want to do like that kind of thing, or like you're not sure, try to just carry it down and then past it, and then you can come back to this. And then this, I can draw through so that I know where this cuts in, but I'm going to end up erasing that when I am finished. Any overlapping marks I would be erasing because this is all going to be left white. All the foliage, the flowers are going to be white. And then the background, the negative spaces in between, will be black. So this stuff, all of these little neat details, draw those in, because when it's inked, they will show and they'll give it more character. Any little negative shapes, when you go back into the layer of smaller shapes, make sure you capture those and draw those in. But once you get the bulk of it down and you've done this, kind of going across, and you get like the big shapes drawn in, and then you maybe even cut in with negative shapes, making sure the negative shapes look like what they do here or on your drawing, on your image. Make sure your negative shapes look like they do. So you're going to constantly be going back and forth. Once you get the big shapes done, and then you start getting like some of the small ones done, you can go in and you can edit. If I wanted to open up more negative space, I could redraw certain things. I could add a leaf here and there if I wanted to. I can fine tune detail just simply drawing, but that's after you get the main portions down, the bigger shapes. Once you do that, then you're going to erase your grid lines. And after, you know, it's all done, you feel good, the whole drawing is done. And then you're going to clean up your lines. So instead of having sketchy lines, you're going to want to clean them up, make sure they're really clean, not all sketchy. And the reason for that is because you're going to be inking these edges. So you're inking the shape of the negative shape, right? So you want these to be really clean so you know exactly where that line is going to be. You're going to be erasing any overlapping marks, any grid marks, things like that. So if you've drawn all of this as you see it with a lot of overlapping, right? You're going to erase everywhere where it overlaps to just get a true positive negative shape image when you're done. And that is basically how you do it. So you're just going to go square to square. So like my next thing, I'm not going to worry about this yet. I'm going to go into, I might go down and try and get these leaves in. Again, pay attention to those negative shapes. I might bring in that stem because I know it goes through this corner. Corners are great to see, you know, what's going on in them. Like way over here in this one, I know that this, if you look at it, is doing this, right? I got that negative shape. I can draw a little bit, I can bounce around a little bit if I want. Where do your points of your leaves end up? In each shape, each square or rectangle. Stems like this, I could come back down here. So I can hop around a little bit. I can see this wherever it's easiest to draw. I can do that, and I can start here. I draw my eye up, and then along this line, where does this come up? Where's my midpoint? And how thick is that? Okay, so where's my midpoint? I'm looking at this, I'm looking at this, and I think it's somewhere here. And then from there, from here, I'm dropping it down, and it's pretty straight. Make sure it goes straight, and maybe all curvy. Okay, and then this, same thing. Because it's, the width is pretty equal, it tapers not tapers, but it widens a little bit right there. But overall, if I look at this lower corner, this drops down to that corner. So just connect. Have your hand on your page at all times. It will help you draw and keep a more steady hand than trying to draw like this, really sketchy. But when you're doing curves, just kind of go in the direct. It's hard to go that way, so you'll probably want to turn everything for leaves like this to get that nice edge, right? To come towards you, because doing them that way, it's very awkward and they'll kind of be all over the place. So you can turn your work around to be comfortable. Just make sure, you know, you're in the same position. And that's it. So I am not going to finish this whole thing because it takes a long time. I will warn you, it takes a while to get it accurate. So take your time. When you have everything down, like I said, you can edit, make it yours. This is reference. This is not. This is your art piece. This and this should feel similar to each other. They should be obviously related, and really looking at those negative shapes and things like that. But once you've got the bulk of it down, toss it. You have your whole drawing. Look at it. Does it feel balanced? Does it feel interesting? Does it feel unified? Is it going off your borders? Things like that. So if not, why? You know, what can you fix? What can you edit? Are there some leaves that are clustered into a really big shape that you can take out to open up negative space? Is there a really big negative space that you have that you want to incorporate some leaves or stems into to break up the shape a little bit? That's at the end. You want to get like kind of like your blueprint, the basic shapes in there, the larger shapes, and then just draw and have fun and be loose. But then in the end, before you ink anything, you're going to want to clean up those edges really nice, erase any overlapping marks before you start inking anything, so you're not inclined to ink those lines. Like right here, I have this, right? So if I'm just drawing, I'm like basically drawing the negative shape. And I have this sleeve that's coming up. But you see the overlap. I need to get rid of that because my foliage is going to be all white. I'm going to go in, I'm going to clean up my lines. And as you go, as you finish an area, you can erase your grid marks. And that's it. So have fun. Be very patient with yourself because, like I said, it takes time. You can use this method for transferring any drawing to a larger scale. You can, like I said, I do mural work, so I use this method to transfer drawings onto very large walls, and it's exactly the same. I'm going along these edges and I'm finding where things come out, and what does this look like in comparison to this? It should feel pretty much the same if I'm really looking at those negative shapes. And this is a little wide, so I would probably thin that out and bring it down. So I'm going to do that because I don't like it. So that's where you can compare your drawing. But know that, you know, this has to feel like one leaf. And then I look at that negative shape, and does it look like that? Does this look like this? Does this look like this? As you go square to square. And in the end, you're going to find you have a nice drawing. So, good luck.